Welcome back folks, Dragon's Dogma 2 is finally here and I've been playing it non-stop since release. The game itself contains a lot of what made it great in the first place, as well as some things which I'm going to talk about in my review. But today I wanted to give you some tips that will help you in your playthrough, spoiler free of course, with connected footage from early game because spoiling later gameplay wouldn't be right, so let's begin. Dragon's Dogma is known to take the maximum out of its level and environmental design, where exploration is greatly rewarded. By uncovering the map as you go and explore, going off the main path is recommended, but be careful that you don't run into any difficult monsters right away. In that case you can always run away and come back later. But looking around bushes, hills, crevices, houses, openings in the rocks, you will come across chests and items that can go from a weapon, piece of armor, and other items and so on that can benefit, you greatly at that moment or further down the road. Chests can be placed anywhere, and I really do mean anywhere, requiring some thinking to reach, so pay attention to each part of the map where you are in, even in the unlikeliest of places, and even while tossing your pawns from time to time so they can reach those chests. As you explore, your main pawn also learns more and will be extra useful if hired, meaning that you will benefit from it. People always want good pawns. In case you run into something for later, leave a marker on the map to remember where it is to return later on in the game. Now as the time passes you will become weaker, which will result in your total HP size going down, meaning no matter how much you try to restore it, overall health pool will shrink. You can rest in inns, which will cost from 2000 to 2500 coins, which is alright but definitely expensive. You can use camping kits to make a camp and rest there, which will restore it, but of course there is that danger of being attacked by monsters. Although if you just want to pass the time, you can sit on these benches and snooze off a bit. If you just want, day or night, keep in mind this will not restore you as a camp or an inn. Besides you and your main pawn, you can hire up to 2 pawns by either going into the rift or hiring pawns as you meet them on the road. Meeting pawns and hiring them from the road is okay, but you can run into some good ones, but going into the rift from time to time is recommended, especially once you think that the pawn is under-leveled for your needs right now. In the case you have a big quest that you think needs additional help, you can go into the rift and find a pawn which can also have that specific quest, mission or area. When hiring a pawn, also look at the vocations, stats and skills to see if it's going to be the most useful for you and your party. Conserving rift points is also recommended, but if you see a good pawn, don't be afraid to hire them. Also, when you are done with someone's pawn and if that pawn was useful, it would be polite to leave something for their arisen. You can also use rift points to spend them at this shop for actual items, but I don't recommend doing it right away, being that, you need those rift points for the pawns rather than some items which you will not really benefit from early on. At the start of the game, conserving your gold is recommended, as you need to pay attention to what you are going to buy, especially when it comes to armor and weapon pieces. Before buying, always think if the next best item which is available at the moment is worth more and your current weapon will be enough. In that case you can save money for later because enchanting that item or enhancing it is more recommended. Also make sure to equip your main pawn as well, because strength in numbers but a weakling is a weakling still. Some of the early weapons you get you can sell or store depending on the price, but it's better to go out and grind some items from monsters, animals, and basically combine that and sell it later on if you actually want to do that more than the equipment, but that's just me because I like to hoard the equipment in these games. If you're thinking of buying ferrystones, keep in mind that they are expensive and they shouldn't be used often, at least until you are not in the late game where you can have a ton of gold to work with. You can also grind goblins and, as I said, other monsters for potential gold drops, as well as grinding, because in this game, it's kinda recommended. Enhancing your items and gear is probably one of the most important things to do in Dragon's Dogma. When you get a good clothing piece or a weapon, you can enhance it here to be a lot stronger, or in the case of armor, get more protection. When you see the items which you need, usually it won't be too hard to farm them, but sometimes if you get a very good item, but your current item is fully enhanced to the max, save it for a bit longer and start working on collecting items for that next armor piece. As you can see, the first enhancements cost a bit of gold, so I always recommend doing this if you lack resources for level 2 and 3, at least you will have some bonus stats. And of course remember to enhance equipment from your main pawn as well, because otherwise they will lack in your party and while being in the party with other Arisen. As you level up your vocation, it's important to also level up your skills. From time to time, check back and see what skills you can upgrade and which additional skills and augmentations you can pick up. Be sure to play around with different skills and test out various combos to see which one fits you the best, and of course, some skills are going to be useful for some monsters while other skills will be useful for a monster B. So depending on where you are going and which monsters you're gonna be fighting, it's always good to reorganize your skills. As always, make sure to upgrade your main pawn abilities and other passive augmentations and skills. My advice with vocations is to really master it before moving on to something else, because some of the benefits will transfer over to your other vocation, being that some abilities with weapons and augmentations stay. I always like to advance my core skills and augments in the beginning, even sacrificing some abilities, because I found it has more benefit on the character. Later on you can invest in that. Also, more vocations do unlock as you level up, so don't worry about it. You can of course change your vocation at the skill trainers at any time, but I always recommend mastering it before you do. Night farming is probably one of the most fun things you can do in this game, but be prepared, during the night much stronger enemies will appear, so you will need to have your consumables ready and a clear path on where to go and where to retreat in the case you are overwhelmed. Early on, don't travel too far away, being that it won't be too hard to find monsters at night. By defeating those monsters you will level up and get those extra items as well. But always make sure to know where are you going to run away in case you are overwhelmed, because from time to time again, be sure to do that because they will cut you down really fast. When it comes to missions and quests in this game, you have to remember some general rules. Read what the quest is before accepting it, or listen to someone's issue, because if it's a timed quest it can be problematic, being that you have to hurry there. Although don't be afraid to fail a quest in this game from time to time, it's not going to be the end of the world, but good planning will make you avoid those issues. And take your time with a quest, don't hurry going from one location to another, because this game is not going to be hurrying you in that sense, being that most areas in this game have secrets, and it's always about the journey to that quest area and back. Take this game in and try to find some side activities and side quests which are hidden around the map, or if you talk to people. People will approach you with their requests, so listen what they have to say. Who knows if you can find something really good. I mean, Dragon's Dogma is a marathon, not a sprint, so take it in that way. As you go around, you will loot and get various items like arrows, bombs, and so on. Use those items to your advantage if you think it can help keep it for later. It's not just about brute strength in this game, so that means you have to be cunning with using everything to your advantage. In Dragon's Dogma, as you pick up stuff like herbs and other resources, you can combine them into much better potions, etc. Try experimenting with it, but also remember that some herbs naturally restore stamina and health, so use them in the case of an emergency. But my advice is always to save and combine, items, being you will benefit much more than just, with raw items. One of the easiest recipes out there is green varish and a fruit which gives you Salburious Draught, great for restoring health and doesn't spoil. Most meat you get in this game you can combine it to basically dry it. Even make some Roborant which will going to, restore your HP. If you overfarm your meat and it's just sitting in your inventory, it will spoil after some time. Remember to use your surroundings to your advantage, going from cliffs, rocks, boulders that you can hit, explosive fire barrels to throw and explode, throwing your pawn to where they can be useful as well. Having a high ground in the fight can also determine the outcome and help you get that cool attack from the top of the monster, or simply having an advantage over bigger enemies that could have had a harder time to get to you. Now, Dragon's Dogma is not a game where you can keep a lot of stuff in your inventory. The bigger the weight, the slower you are, as well as your stamina regen is slower. So all the items you have, just store them in the actual storage. Don't carry it around, and only bring what you need for that quest or, well, your current objective. Otherwise, it's just bloat. In case you are doing a longer quest, you can distribute some of the items along your party to balance it out so that you're not going to be heavy, but also keep in mind to keep your other pawns not over encumbered as well. When you come across Portcrystals, you can pick it up and place it on the ground. Don't worry, you can move it later if you want. Place them strategically to where you think you go often, but I don't recommend using Ferrystones just like that. Again, they're expensive and only use them in dire need. You can buy Ferrystones in the city for 10k gold, but you know, don't spend money on it right away. Better keep that for equipment and enhancing, because remember, you are not the only, equipping yourself, but also your pawn. When it comes to fighting in the game, it's one of the best and most satisfying things to do. Remember that monsters here have weak spots, and listen to what your pawns will tell you if they know, because they can provide some useful information about a monster, like where to hit them, to disable them or weaken them. For bigger encounters, depending on your vocation, keep your distance in line, and remember that you have to survive. If your pawn goes down, you can revive them yourself without wasting a wake stone, not so much, which is another item I recommend you save. On the map itself, you can have various monsters going from easy ones like goblins, harpies and so on, to tougher ones, so if you think you can't fight it, just avoid and run away. Don't rush fights themselves, because usually that can leave you wounded or destroyed. By being patient and utilizing right tactics, by, kiting the monster and hitting its weak spots even at a lower level, you will be able to defeat some tougher ones. If you have a mage in your party, they can potentially buff your weapons with various effects being fire, electricity, light and so on, which does bonus damage on enemies. Just using fire on your weapon will give you an edge against monsters you meet like wolves, harpies, goblins, trolls and so on. Also remember to save often in this game. You have a last rested save, but saving often after the fight, and especially where you are safe, is good, because if you fail you might lose a lot of progress, and being it's only one save file, to prevent you from save scumming. In the case you lose your pawn or your main pawn, you can restore them at the rift, so don't worry about it. If they're downed, you have a bit of time before they're actually, passed on, so you can save them. Saving takes about 1 to 2 seconds, so keep that in mind in case a monster is charging you. And these were my first initial tips for the game. I try to avoid any spoilers as much as possible. As always, if you enjoyed this video, click that like button, because it will also help the video in the algorithm. Join our community on Twitter and Discord, and huge thanks to my current Patreon supporters. As always, stay classy everyone, and I will see you very soon with a new video. Bye bye.